The first thing I noticed was the backpack. It was sitting on the ground next to the bench outside the hospital entrance, unzipped, and a crumpled piece of paper was sticking out of the top. Then I saw the shoes. Small, white sneakers with cartoon cats on the sides, dangling off the edge of the bench because the little legs wearing them were too short to reach the ground. My grandson, he was 5 years old, sitting perfectly still, holding his baby sister on his lap like someone had told him not to move. And next to them, my daughter-in-law sat with her head down, her hair covering her face, her left arm cradled against her chest like it hurt to move it. I had come to the hospital for a routine checkup. Nothing serious, just blood pressure, the kind of thing women my age do to stay ahead of time. I almost didn't see them. The parking lot was crowded, and I was running late. But something made me look. Maybe it was the stillness of them, the way they sat like 3 people trying to disappear. I walked closer. My grandson looked up first. His eyes were wide and red, the way children look when they have been crying for a long time and have run out of tears. "Grandma," he whispered. My chest cracked open. I knelt in front of him. "Where is your father?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. He didn't answer. He just looked at his mother. My daughter-in-law finally raised her head. Her eyes were swollen. A bruise spread across her left cheekbone, purple and fresh. She tried to smile but couldn't hold it. "He told us to leave," she said. Her voice was flat, like something inside her had switched off. "Who?" I asked, even though the answer was already forming in my stomach like a stone. "Your son," she said. "And his father-in-law. They said I wasn't good enough. They said my background was a stain on the family name." For a moment, the world tilted. Cars moved in the parking lot. Somewhere behind us, an ambulance pulled away. My granddaughter made a small sound in her brother's arms, but I heard none of it. I stared at the bruise on her face. Then I stood up, took a breath, and pulled out my car keys. "Come with me," I said calmly. She shook her head. "I don't want to cause trouble." I smiled. Not a warm smile. A steady one. "Trouble is already here," I said. "Now let's go fix it." She looked at me like she didn't believe me, and that told me everything I needed to know about how long she had been broken down before today. I picked up my granddaughter, grabbed the backpack, and walked them to my car. On the drive home, the children fell asleep in the back seat within minutes. Exhaustion does that to small bodies. My daughter-in-law stared out the window, silent, her injured arm resting in her lap. I didn't push her to talk. Some pain needs quiet before it can find words. After a while, she spoke. "He changed," she said softly. "After his father-in-law moved to town last year, everything changed." I gripped the steering wheel. My son had married this woman 6 years ago. I watched them build a life, buy a house, have 2 beautiful children. He was kind then, patient. He called me every Sunday. Then the calls stopped. He got distant. When I visited, the house felt tense, like a room holding its breath. I told myself it was stress, work, the pressure of young parenthood. I was wrong. "His father-in-law," she continued. "He told my husband that I married above my station, that my family had nothing, that I was dragging him down. I said nothing. I just drove. He said a man with his potential shouldn't be tied to someone like me. I let those words sit between us. When we arrived at my house, I carried the children inside, tucked them into the guest bed, and sat my daughter-in-law at the kitchen table. I made her tea. I cleaned the bruise on her face with warm water and gentle hands. She winced, but didn't pull away. "Did he do this?" I asked, meaning the bruise. She hesitated. "He grabbed my arm," she said. I fell against the counter. My hand paused on the cloth. For a long time, I didn't speak. Then I folded the cloth carefully, set it down, and said the only thing that mattered. "This ends now." She looked at me with confusion. "You're his mother," she said. "Why would you help me?" "Because being his mother doesn't make me blind," I said. "And because you are the mother of my grandchildren." That night, after everyone was asleep, I called my son. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Mum," he said. His voice was tight. "Where are you?" I asked. "At home," he said. "She left. Took the kids." "She didn't leave," I said. "You threw her out." Silence. "I found her at the hospital," I continued, "with a bruise on her face and your children sitting on a bench like lost luggage." More silence. Then his voice changed. Harder. Dad was right, he said. His father-in-law, not me. She's not built for this life. She holds me back. I closed my eyes. Dad, he called that man. Not by name, not by title. Dad, you listen to me carefully, I said. The woman you threw away is under my roof tonight. Your children are safe. And tomorrow, we are going to have a conversation you are not ready for. He laughed. About what? I hung up before I answered, because the answer would have ended the call too quickly, and I needed him to sit in that silence, wondering. The truth was, my son had no idea about the company. He worked at a firm called Whitmore Cole. It was a mid-sized company with good contracts and a growing reputation. He was proud of his position there. He believed he had earned it. What he didn't know was that I had started that company. 42 years ago, under my maiden name, I built it from a single desk in a rented office. I brought in partners, signed the deals, survived 2 recessions, and turned it into something real. When I stepped back 15 years ago, I stayed on as a silent majority owner. My name wasn't on the letterhead anymore, but it was on every legal document that mattered. My son never asked where the family money came from. He assumed it was his father's pension and a modest inheritance. He never looked deeper. People rarely look at the ground beneath them until it cracks. His father-in-law, a man named Gerald, had moved to town 14 months ago after his second wife left him. He was loud, confident, the kind of man who took up every room he walked into. He told stories about deals he had closed, people he knew, connections he had made. My son adored him. Gerald saw opportunity in my son's position. He pushed himself into conversations about the business, offered advice, made introductions. Within months, he had inserted himself into the edges of the company through my son's trust. I had watched it happen quietly. I thought it was ambition, maybe foolishness. I didn't realize it was strategy. Now I understood. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and opened my safe. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. Ownership documents, board records, financial histories. I spread them across my desk and read every line. Then I called my lawyer. Good morning, I said. I need a full audit of Whitmore Cole's board activity for the past 12 months. Everything Gerald has touched. There was a pause. How soon? She asked. Yesterday, I said. By 10 o'clock, my daughter-in-law sat across from me at the kitchen table, still fragile but calmer. The children played in the next room. My grandson had found an old puzzle in the closet and was quietly putting it together. He hadn't asked about his father. That silence worried me more than tears would have. I need to tell you something, my daughter-in-law said. She wrapped her hands around her mug. Gerald has been telling my husband that once he takes over the company fully, he wants to restructure. He said certain people don't have the right pedigree to be in leadership. Pedigree, I repeated. She nodded. He talks about people like their horses. I leaned back. And my son believes this. She looked away. He believes Gerald is the father he always wanted. That hit me in a place I didn't expect. Because I knew what she meant. My husband, my son's real father, had died when the boy was 14. I raised him alone after that. I worked 70-hour weeks. I missed things. Games, recitals, conversations I should have had. And now someone else had filled that gap with poison. At noon, my lawyer called back. Her voice was careful. You need to see this, she said. Gerald filed paperwork 3 weeks ago to restructure the board. He listed your son as the primary voting member and himself as advisor with signing authority. I closed my eyes. Without my consent? Without anyone's consent who matters, she replied. He used your son's credentials and forged the rest. How far did it go? I asked. Far enough, she said. He's been redirecting contracts. Small ones at first, then larger. All flowing through a company he owns on the side. Stealing, I said. Legally speaking, she said. Fraud. I thanked her and hung up. My daughter-in-law watched me from the doorway. How bad is it? She asked. Bad enough that it won't survive daylight, I said. That afternoon, I drove to the company. I hadn't been inside the building in 3 years. The receptionist didn't recognize me. That was fine. I didn't need recognition. I needed records. I met with 2 senior partners in a back office. They were uncomfortable, surprised to see me, unsure of what to say. I placed documents on the table. I walked them through everything Gerald had done. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, one of them leaned forward. "We had concerns," he admitted. "But your son vouched for him. We didn't want to go over his head." "You should have gone over his head," I said. "That's why I'm here." I left with copies of everything I needed. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A text from my son. "I know you went to the office," Gerald told me. "Stay out of this, Mum. You don't understand business." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back one line. "Tomorrow. My office. Bring him." If you're listening right now, and you've ever watched someone you love fall under the influence of a person who didn't deserve their trust, stay with me. This story is about to turn. And if it speaks to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. That evening, I sat with my grandchildren. My grandson looked up from his puzzle. "Grandma," he asked, "why is Daddy angry all the time?" I brushed his hair back. "Sometimes grown-ups get confused," I said. "They listen to the wrong people." He thought about that for a moment. "Will he get unconfused?" he asked. I smiled. "I'm working on it," I said. My daughter-in-law stood in the hallway, listening. Her eyes were wet. Later, after the children were in bed, she sat next to me. "He wasn't always like this," she said. "He used to carry our son on his shoulders and sing in the kitchen. He used to leave notes in my lunchbox." "I know," I said. "Gerald told him that kindness was weakness," she whispered. "That a real man controls his house, his wife, his future." I reached over and took her hand. "A real man protects his family," I said. "He doesn't demolish it." She squeezed my fingers. "Do you think he can come back from this?" I didn't answer right away, because the honest answer was that I didn't know. What I did know was that the man pulling the strings would not get to keep them. The next morning, they arrived together. My son walked in first, stiff and defensive. Gerald followed behind him, confident, smiling, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He looked around my living room like he was appraising it. "Nice place," he said. "Your late husband did well." I didn't correct him. Not yet. My son sat across from me, arms crossed. Gerald stood by the window, hands in his pockets, like he was the one in charge. "Mum," my son said, "this needs to stop. You're embarrassing me at my own company." "Your company?" I repeated quietly. Gerald stepped forward. "With all due respect, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "your son has built something impressive. The last thing he needs is family drama dragging it down." I picked up a folder from the table. "Interesting," I said, "because from what I can see, the only thing dragging this company down is you." Gerald's smile faded slightly. "Excuse me?" I opened the folder. "Redirected contracts," I said. "Forged board approvals. A shell company receiving payments that belong to Whitmore Cole." My son frowned. "What are you talking about?" I slid the papers toward him. "Look for yourself," I said. He picked them up slowly. As he read, his face changed. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something worse. He looked at Gerald. "What is this?" he asked. Gerald's jaw tightened. "Misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "Accounting overlap. I can explain everything." "Then explain this," I said, placing another document on the table. "Your signature, authorizing a transfer to a company you own, dated 2 weeks ago." Gerald didn't touch it. He just stared at me. My son's voice cracked. "You told me those were standard restructuring costs," he said to Gerald. "They were," Gerald insisted. "This woman is twisting things because she can't accept that her son grew up and doesn't need her anymore." My son flinched. I leaned forward. "I built Whitmore Cole," I said. "Every brick, every contract, every dollar that keeps that building standing came from my work." The room went dead silent. My son stared at me. "That's not possible," he whispered. I pulled out the original ownership papers. "Filed 42 years ago under my maiden name, Patricia Cole." Gerald's face turned white. My son's hands trembled as he read. His mouth opened, then closed. "You never told me," he said. "You never asked," I replied. "And I wanted you to earn your way, not ride on my name." Gerald moved toward the door. "This changes nothing," he said. "Your son and I have a partnership." "No," I said. "You have a fraud case. My lawyer filed this morning." Gerald stopped. His confidence broke open like a cracked mirror. "You wouldn't dare," he said. "I would," I said. And I did. My son stood up. His eyes were wild. "Mum, wait," he said. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money." I looked at him steadily. "But you knew about your wife," I said. "You knew when you grabbed her arm. You knew when you put her and your children on the street." His face collapsed. Gerald tried one more time. "This family drama," he started, "is over," I finished. I opened the front door. Standing on the porch were my lawyer and 2 investigators. Gerald's face drained of whatever color was left. "Mr. Gerald Tate," my lawyer said. "We need to discuss the filings." Gerald turned to my son. "Fix this," he hissed. My son didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the floor, his entire world rearranging itself around a truth he should have seen years ago. If you're listening and you've ever discovered that the people you trusted the most were the ones doing the most damage, stay with me. This is where it gets real. And if this story means something to you, take a second to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps more than you know. Gerald was escorted out without a scene. He went quietly, which surprised me. But men like him always go quiet when they realize the audience has changed. My son stayed. He sat on the couch with his head in his hands, while I stood by the kitchen counter, letting the silence do its work. Finally, he spoke. "Where are they?" he asked. "Here," I said. "Upstairs. Safe." His shoulders shook. "Can I see them?" "Not yet," I said. He looked up, startled. "Mom, they're my children, and she's their mother," I said. "And you bruised her face and threw her out of her home." He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. His eyes filled with tears. "He told me she was holding me back," he whispered. "He said a strong man doesn't let anyone dim his light." I sat across from him. "A strong man doesn't need someone to tell him who to be," I said. "You had a good heart before Gerald arrived. Where did it go?" He didn't answer. But the tears fell freely now. In the weeks that followed, things moved quickly. Gerald's financial fraud was confirmed by auditors. Every redirected dollar, every forged document, every lie he had carefully layered into the company's structure was pulled apart and exposed. He fought it at first, hired lawyers, made threats, but evidence doesn't bend to intimidation. The court case was straightforward. Gerald had used my son as a doorway to commit fraud against a company he had no right to touch. The judge reviewed everything, including Gerald's pattern of manipulation, the way he had isolated my son from his family, the way he had targeted my daughter-in-law specifically because she had no powerful family to protect her. He was wrong about that. Gerald received a sentence that included restitution and probation. He left town before the ink was dry. I never heard from him again, and I never expected to. My son's recovery was slower and harder. He moved into a small apartment near my house. He attended counseling. He didn't ask to come home to his wife and children right away, and I respected that because repair doesn't happen on the schedule of the person who caused the damage. My daughter-in-law stayed with me for 3 months. She healed, not just the bruise, but the deeper things. The belief that she wasn't enough, the fear that she deserved what happened, the silence she had swallowed for over a year. One evening, she sat next to me on the porch while the children played in the yard. My grandson was teaching his little sister how to blow dandelion seeds. They floated across the grass like tiny promises. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already did," I replied. "You stayed alive. You protected those children. That's the hardest kind of bravery." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you think he can change?" she asked, meaning my son. I watched my grandson laugh as his sister grabbed a dandelion and shoved the whole thing in her mouth. "I think people can choose differently," I said, "but choosing once isn't enough. It has to be every day." She nodded slowly. 6 months later, my son stood on my porch. He looked different, thinner but steadier, like a man who had been stripped down to his foundation and was slowly rebuilding. He held a small box. Inside were letters, one for each of his children and one for his wife. He had written them by hand, every page full. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just need them to know the truth." I took the box and looked at him for a long time. "Truth is a good start," I said, "but it's only the first step. You walk the rest." He nodded. He didn't ask to come inside. A year after I found them at that hospital bench, My daughter-in-law started a small business of her own. She made children's clothing, hand-sewn, each piece named after a flower. My granddaughter wore a little dress called Dandelion. My grandson carried a backpack she had made him with a patch that said Brave. She didn't go back to my son right away. They talked, carefully, slowly, like two people crossing a bridge neither was sure would hold. Some weeks were good, some were not, but the cruelty was gone, and in its place was something fragile and honest. One afternoon, I stood at the kitchen window and watched my grandchildren run through the sprinkler in the backyard. Their laughter filled every corner of the house. My daughter-in-law sat on the porch steps, sketching a new design, her face calm and open in a way I had never seen before. My son arrived to pick up the children for the weekend. He stood at the gate and waited, not pushing, not demanding. My grandson ran to him and jumped into his arms. My granddaughter followed, slower, still cautious, but smiling. He looked at his wife over the children's heads. She met his eyes and nodded once, just once, and something shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but willingness. I turned away from the window and sat down at my desk. On it was a framed photo, old and slightly faded, of me standing in front of a small building with a freshly painted sign. My first day as a business owner, I was 30 years old and terrified. People forget who builds the foundation. They walk across it every day without looking down. But the foundation remembers. And when the storm comes, it's the only thing left standing. If you're listening right now, I want you to remember something. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to fight to be strong. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is open your door when someone has nowhere else to go. And if someone ever tells you that your bloodline, your background, or your name makes you less than, smile. Because people who measure worth by last names have never built anything worth keeping. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or something you survived, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Because sometimes, the real power in a family isn't the loudest voice at the table. It's the quiet woman who built the table in the first place.